What's your average day like?
My average day, it depends. It depends on what I'm doing. My average day is about to be, get up in the morning, drive to a city, check into a hotel, get ready for a show, go play a show, get back, do a meet and greet all night, and then go home, crash, get up the next morning, go to the next city. It's just every day in the next city. And honestly, mostly my days consist of an airplane, an airport, a car, and a hotel room.
When you're touring?
I mean, even just all the time. I mean, I don't know how many times I've been home probably in an entirety, like 2 months out of this year. So
Wow,
far.
I didn't know your schedule was that packed. That's crazy.
I'm always on the road.
Right.
I mean, when you say when you're touring, I'm always touring. There's not like, oh, I go on tour in the summer. It's like, no, I have a summer tour, and then I come home, and then I'm home for like 3 weeks, and then I go tour in the fall, and then we have the spring tour, and I mean, it's just literally like we're just always.
What's your
on the
relationship
road.
with that schedule, though? Do you feel like that prohibits you from getting shit done when you're at home, or do you feel like you're still in love with that experience?
No, I love that experience, and I don't know. I think being at home sometimes it just gets kind of like stifling, and I think the constant being on the move, being on the go, puts you in the mindset of like, all right, we need to be progressing and things need to be moving. And I think when you're at home, sometimes 3 or 4 days could feel like, it's only been 3 or 4 days, like big deal. But when you're on the road, you're like, dude, I've been to 5 states. I've been on 4 airplanes. I've been to 6 hotels. I've done 17 interviews. I've played 5 shows. And you can't return an email?
Yeah, for
You know
real.
what I mean? So it's like, oh, well, I got it on Tuesday, and it's only Thursday. And you're like, yeah, dude. I mean, but come on. So I like the feeling of being on the road because it puts you in that mindset of like move, move, move,
Do you know what's crazy is like you seem like you're so on point and like your life is so organized and stuff, which is really stands in like stark comparison to like people try to like take these like bad photos of you and then like create this narrative that you're like fucked up.
Who, me?
Yeah.
Oh, maybe.
But it
I
seems like
guess.
the total opposite.
You know what it is? I think it's just the character on Drake and Josh, I get, because it's always so funny. Like, of course, and I think it's just the go-to on Instagram, like memes or whatever, memes or whatever. When you're like scrolling through, it's like, oh, he must have done all the coke in the world. Like, oh, tell him not to do so much coke, or tell him not to do so much, or look at this meth head, or look at this blah blah blah. And I have other friends too who like it really affects, man. It's a real bummer too, because like, man, they're really talented and they're working their asses off, and then they go into their Instagram comments and man, they really take to heart what people are saying on Instagram, and then they respond, and then they get then they go and they get isolated, and they're at home, and I'm like, bro, I don't know, maybe it's because I grew up without it, so I know what it's like to not have
When
it.
you've had a lot longer to get used to it too.
I think maybe that too.
Yeah.
Maybe these kids that are being thrust into it, that all of a sudden they're like, shit, I woke up and I have 387,000 followers, and I had 13,000 yesterday. And now people are telling me like all this crazy stuff, and they're taking it to heart. But for me, I don't know. I just like, you go through and you're like, whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, I'll get a comment that's like, yo, I'm going to kill you. I'm coming to your house tonight. I'm
Yeah.
going to kill you. I'm like, all right. My
Yeah.
girlfriend, though, I feel terrible for her because she's like way newer to it. So
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like, it's such a like learning curve of realizing
Yeah.
like this doesn't matter. Like but I, and then at the same time, I feel like, am I less human? Because everybody can be talking shit about me and it doesn't bother me. And sometimes I feel like I need to do like a mental check of like, maybe I should care about this. Like, maybe this is a big enough
But I
deal.
mean, I don't know, man. I just came from a generation of like sticks and stones will break my bones.
Exactly.
Man. But like, words won't hurt. And now we're all in the generation of like, words are just as bad as violence. And I'm like, yo, please say as much as you want to me before you try and hit me in the face. Like,
Yeah, for real.
Internet is a
just say
toxic
everything
place.
you want to say, but just don't try and hit me in the face, because I'm a shitty fighter. So like, I would way rather you spew vomit.
You roll with security when you're on the road?
No.
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 So you're not
I mean,
afraid of, you're definitely not
it
a rapper.
depends on where I go. It depends on where I go. Like if I'm out of the country, like I have a much bigger fan base in like Latin America, for example.
Really?
Yeah, it's crazy. I don't get it.
That's dope. I wouldn't have guessed.
I had a big record out there a couple years ago, and the songs were really, really like #1 and all this stuff, and all over Mexico and Latin America. And so it was crazy. We went down there and we were playing, okay, like 1,000, if we played like 5,000 seats here in the States, it was like, oh man, that was an amazing show. Like, oh my God. And so we went to Mexico for the first time thinking, cool, we're going to start building this fan base, and we'll go to play these little clubs, and it'll start to grow, and we'll start to, build this market. And we landed, and we got off the airplane, and it looked like the Beatles at JFK. I mean, it was like there were fans, just thousands of people, and security, and all this stuff. And then we get whisked away, and we're being treated. I mean, it was like we were Elvis or Justin Bieber. Like,
So
it was like, going and meeting the president, and going and having dinner with these dignitaries and these other massively famous people. We go to these dinners, and I'm like, these people, I mean, like the Julia Roberts of Mexico, and these huge stars, and I'm like, we're not. But down there, they just viewed us as, I get, because the record was so big. I mean, it was just weird.
But so they didn't have a relationship with the show or any of your prior work?
They did have a relationship with the show, but it wasn't, it intensified it. It was like, imagine if while I was on Drake and Josh, I had a massively successful album here, and was doing like a Justin Bieber thing or something like that.
That must be so crazy to
It
be
was
like,
wild.
have your fame level be like adjusted so differently in different countries and
Yeah,
stuff.
it's
I hope I get
wild.
to that point.
It's wild. So when we got there, I mean, we ended up going to the we went in for sound check, and dude, we were flying blind. Like, the agents just said, okay, here's where you get on the airplane, here's what time you land, here's where we go, who's picking you up, here's your hotel, blah, 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 blah. We didn't look up the venues, we didn't look anything up, whatever. So we get to this venue, and it's the biggest venue in Mexico City.
Wow.
And Paul McCartney plays here, you know what I'm saying? So I'm looking at I'm like, all right, so there must be like, some smaller club inside this place. And then we set up for sound check, and all of our stuff set up, and we walk in there, and it's a 10,000 seat arena. And I'm like, what the fuck? What is going on? Like, this has got to be a joke. Like, what, And then anyway, we sold out a matinee show and then an evening show. So we did 2 shows to 10,000 to like 20,000 people that day. And then we went and toured that around all over Latin America and Brazil and all that stuff. But it was just, it blew our minds. I mean, we literally came from like playing the Roxy, and then we're like, all right, we're gonna go play some clubs in Mexico, and then walked out on stage, and there was 10,000 people that knew every single lyric to every song on the record. It was unbelievable.
That's so crazy too, because you can never really fully understand like what it was within their culture that made that song work so perfectly at that moment.
Yeah.
It's sort of like just mysterious. Like you're inside of this bubble where it's like, I don't really understand what kind of music Mexican people like, or like how they figure out their favorite songs.
I had a friend who had a huge hit, and it became sort of almost like an anthem for South Africa, and but it didn't really. I mean, it charted okay, in the States, like the 80s, 90s, but it was like #1 in this one region, and it became sort of an anthem, and it's sort of like the what was that movie about that songwriter, the one who it was like homeless, and then
Right.
Rodriguez, is it Rodriguez?
I forget his name, but it's this whole
It's
movie.
something like Rodriguez, something like that.
Rodrigo, some shit like
yeah,
that, where
something like
he had a hugely famous song and he didn't even
He
know.
didn't know. Yeah, and then years later, like, didn't you know that you were basically the Beatles in this area of the world?
I did watch that
And then
documentary.
he went back and did the same thing. He went back and was like, I was a homeless guy living in basically squatting, and then he goes back to this country and they sell out. And he's like, oh my God. And he's like, everyone knows the songs, and everyone, so it's
That's
just kind
amazing.
of crazy. Yeah, it's like that, oh, I'm big in Japan, It's true. It's true. You go, it's wild.
I know. People totally think that's a lie when like people say that. Like it's become like a meme
Yeah.
or like a cliche, but it's crazy to think that actually happens.
Yeah, no, it's like here, you know, you're spelling your name to the girl at Starbucks, and then you fly across the world, and you're like being whisked away by Secret Service. It's crazy.
Damn.
Yeah, it's wild.
That is crazy.
But that's what's fun about just touring the world. You know, it's like there's so much outside the United States. It's like, you know, to get at, and the Latin fans. I mean, there's nothing. I mean, playing a show here in America is great. It's fun, and the fans are awesome. But man, once you get outside, they're so loyal, and like, I mean, lack of better words, like you could fart on a record, and they'd be like, "Yes, I love it, number one." You know,
America doesn't really feel like traveling to me so much because
Yeah.
it's like, you know, when you're in America, it's like you know how the hotels work. You know that you could grab your phone and type hotel, and boom, your Uber is going to take you to a hotel. It's just not that complicated. There's a lot less things that can go wrong, especially if you like stay out of bad areas. So it'd be like an easy thing. To
Yeah,
maybe,
I mean, that's the same thing with traveling though too. It's like, you know, there's good places, bad places. I heard it's so dangerous there. It's like, well, yeah, but so is LA. Like, don't go in those areas of LA at certain times of the night, you know?
Yeah. If you're a famous musician, just don't go anywhere besides the hotel and maybe
Yeah.
like the club if you're like escorted by somebody there.
Yeah, but I feel like, I don't know. I feel like sometimes there's
A degree to which you want to be normal.
a degree of which you want to be normal, but also a degree of which you want to be seen with a big group of security guards and entourage and escorts, because, you know, I mean,
Feels good.
honestly, there's a level of obviously like a Justin Bieber where there's just, you have no option. Like you're gonna go out, you should most likely have somebody trailing you 10 feet at all times. Like that's just, you're a John Lennon. Like you're way too big. You know, turn over a rock and that person who's been living under there for 10 years knows who you are. You know, but for the most part, a lot of these people are only really, really recognized by their fans or by people who know, like, oh, okay, who they are. And so when they're in there, especially outside the country, when they're just like in their normal world, normal lives, like, you know, I mean, even like if I'm in Mexico, dude, I'll leave my hotel and I'll walk down the street and eventually there'll be like a big group of people following and, you know, wanting to sit down, but we usually just end up sitting down and like having tacos together or something. And like, it ends up being like a big Last Supper, like big long table of just fans, and we hang out. And as long as you just are cool with people and aren't, you know, obviously you have to be careful and you have to, you know, have street smarts and pick your, you know, times and
See that
judge people, you know,
the scenario of like being able to just hang out with them seems dope, but when I try to do that a lot of times, it just becomes a photo session, and then I just don't get that much enjoyment out of it.
Yeah, it does, but I think that also, you know, when you are accessible and approachable, it becomes less of like, oh, this is my only chance to get a picture with you right now. Like you're only gonna spend what, 2 minutes with me, so like I gotta get a picture with you right now. And if it's more of like, yeah, oh, what, you want a selfie? Yeah, sure. Oh, here, give me your phone. Come here. And then it's more of like, oh wow, I could wait till the end of the dinner and approach him nicely, or I could, you know, he's not gonna bite me. You know, I don't have to jump in there. It's like a lot of times when the swarming does happen, like it's because they think, oh my God, I'm not gonna get this moment with him, or I'm not gonna get the picture. And then I just turn around to everyone. I'm like, dude, I got no, unless, you know, I usually don't have somewhere I have to be at that moment, you know. And so you're just like, dude, everyone will get their pictures or whatever you want to do, you know. And then everyone just kind of like chills and is cool. And I don't know, I just like being more approachable and engaging with like fans and stuff.